Okay, go ahead and just get it started.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our workshop tonight. I'd like to introduce Amy Smith. You can see her bio on the screen, and I'll turn it over to Amy now.
Okay, hello. I'm glad we're recording because I know we have some people maybe running late. So let's go ahead and get started. Give me 1 second. For some reason, I'm not seeing. Okay. All right. So I've put in the chat some materials that we will just a form for the follow-up materials, rather. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Okay, you guys can see the slides, correct? Hopefully. Okay. Okay, so we will go ahead and jump right in. So this is our I've been to Luton a few times. I'm really excited to be back, and in the next hour, I'm going to take you through where words matter on your college applications. Talk about why a timeline is a game changer in the plan. I'll explain what I call a wow factor, and that's something that you can use to really set yourself apart in this competitive space. And then I'll also wrap the presentation with what you can do now, regardless of what grade you're in. So just very quick intro in terms of my background. I went to Northwestern, studied traditional journalism, and I launched a PR firm where for many years I was helping companies tell their stories. I also launched a parenting website called the Mom Teeny Lounge, where I was reporting on what I call tips and tools for the business of motherhood. And about 10 years ago, when my oldest applied to college, I realized that colleges are asking you to do that same thing. They're asking you to be a journalist, which is a great storyteller, and a public relations expert, setting yourself apart in a competitive space. So that's my family across the bottom. We have 3 boys. They went to Vanderbilt, Duke, and University of South Carolina. They each had totally different majors, different paths. And I believe that each student also has a unique path to college. So I like to start every presentation with the same promise, and that is this. Students, you can shine like the brightest star. I promise you, there is no reason you can't. It definitely takes some planning, some preparation, some work, but there's no doubt that you can't shine bright in the college process. Okay, so this is a quote from a parent who attended one of my sessions. They said, I've been reading about how important it is not to overlook this part of the application and to use the space in a way that doesn't just list, all the random things you've done, but helps further illustrate the person you are and how you'll contribute to the student body, consistent with each school's specific mission. So that's a lot, right? And obviously, they're referring to your main college essay, which we'll really focus heavily on tonight. You don't want it to just repeat your activities or your resume, and I'll explain why. So in a competitive situation like college applications, words definitely matter. These are all the different areas that you will be writing on your college application. So you'll have the activity section, the main essay, likely some supplemental essays, and I'll be explaining a bunch of these in more detail later. You may choose to email the admissions officer to communicate, demonstrate interest, etc. The application itself. There's also an additional information section where you can explain basically just that, additional info. There used to be a community disruption question for 5 or 6 years, sort of post-pandemic. They renamed that just this year, challenges and circumstances, and I'll show you that as well. Test scores I crossed out because obviously there's a lot of test optional. I'll tell you why. Obviously, a lot of tests were canceled during the pandemic. Again, it all comes back to the pandemic. So we do see a lot of test optional applications. So if you think about your college application as a series of puzzle pieces all fitting together nicely, you see that on the left-hand side, the colleges will need to evaluate many different pieces of your puzzle in about 10 minutes. The average read time is 7, 10, 12 minutes. So on average, 10 minutes. So it's really important that we make it a very, very easy review process, that everything kind of fits together. So these are a bunch of colleges. I collected logos several years ago of all the colleges that had ever said yes to one of my private coaching students. Now, am I doing this to brag? Like, I am so proud of all my students, but I'm also doing this to show you something really important. There are more than 4,000 colleges in the United States alone, plus there are many colleges in other countries. So the bottom line is this: beyond the short list that you hear in the hallways at Wooten, there are many, many, many colleges and many ways to find your perfect fit. Tonight, we're going to focus primarily on the Common App, which is the main application portal. There are more than 1,000 schools, about 1,074 at last count, on the Common App. And this is a great way to apply to many schools at once. These are some other portals, but regardless of the portal that you're applying to, the writing ask is pretty similar, okay? So it's pretty much an activity list of some sort, a main essay, and then each school may have some different application asks, if you will. So in terms of facts and figures, and let me just stop for 1 second. Brian, I just wanted to confirm that the waiting room is disabled. Sorry, I meant to ask that before.
It is disabled.
Okay, great. Sorry, I meant to ask that. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so facts and figures. So again, don't focus on the nitty-gritties here, but in general, there has been a spike in the number of applications in terms of the number of students applying to college, the number of applications per student as well. On the bottom, you see test optional applications. Here we're seeing the lines kind of crisscross. Again, we are seeing an increase in schools requiring test scores, but still a significant number not requiring it. So how can you create your story for success? Should you use artificial intelligence in your college essay? Absolutely not. They are looking for it. They're asking you to check multiple boxes saying that you didn't do this. So please, please, please do not use AI. It could get you into a lot of trouble. They could revoke an admissions decision. So I highly encourage you not to do AI at all. There was a study done at the University of Pennsylvania, and I interviewed the person who conducted that study. It was a graduate psychology student. It was really interesting to me. Basically, what he found was that some college admissions offices are starting to use AI to do the first read on applications. Now, why are they doing this? Like I just told you, there's a spike in the number of applications. So schools that are seeing 50, 60, 70,000 applications, they can't physically review them all. So some of them, not all, are looking for ways to kind of gather some information from AI. Now, do I think it's fair that they're using AI and telling you not to? I don't, but I also think that I want you to keep this image in your mind if you're tempted to use AI. Just don't do it. The reason is a computer cannot generate a human story. All right. The artificial intelligence doesn't know about all of your amazing life experiences and, replicating your writing style, all these things. So definitely you want to make sure that you are writing everything you submit to college. Many reasons there. Okay, so I want you to think about communicating your wow factor. What's a wow factor? That is something that you and only you can say. We all have wow factors. So I think that that's something that really takes a little bit of brainstorming and digging to think about, but try to stand out and be unique because that's how you win. Okay. So the first place you can do that is reporting your activities. So when you report your activities on your college application, this is basically your college resume. Typically, you're reporting 8 to 10 activities. They can be hobbies, extracurriculars, clubs, etc. Colleges like what we call deep dives or logical combinations. That's like sort of one thing we hear, students who are involved in things from many different angles. However, they also love generalists, people who love to explore and experiment. So there's no wrong answer in terms of activities, but you do want to report your wow factor. And with activities, that pretty much boils down to impact, I think. So where have you made an impact or a difference? So what's your story? I love this question. I've been asking this for many, many, many years. How do you unlock your best college essay? I like to start my brainstormings with this question. So students, what do you love more than anything else in the world? Think about what you really, really, really love, and that might lead you to a great idea. So I'm going to take you through some of my top tips here. We'll work left to right, row to row, and I'm going to kind of just share some of my tips that I've just from seeing so many essays over the years that I hope will help you as well. The first one is don't worry if you can't write the beginning first. The beginning and end of your essay Those are the hardest parts of the essay. It's almost like the bread holding the sandwich together. And if you think about a sandwich, the bread could change many times, but it's still basically the same sandwich. So don't worry too much about that because, like I said, it's really, really tough and it's not a big deal. Don't let that hold you up from writing the rest of your essay and then coming back for the sort of packaging, if you want to call it that. The second thing is don't rush. It's a process. You want to think about your college application process as a marathon, not a sprint. I believe that creativity doesn't happen when we're rushing. So I really want you to think about putting time on your side. The third tip, don't use AI. Again, we talked about it, but again, if you told me I love the environment, I really care about the environment. A chat bot or whatever has no idea that you love the environment so much that you coaxed turtles into the ocean once because you saw that they were on dry land and they had to get back to safety. Like those are the kinds of details that come from your heart and your head. Don't use $5 words. So what that means is don't use big words just to impress. If you speak that way and that's your natural cadence, your natural way of writing, go for it. But don't use words just for the sake of impressing because it really could backfire. My example there is I had a student many years ago who described something and I said, that sounds like an epiphany, like a major epiphany. So he typed it into the essay and the way he spelled it, I said, wait, do you know what epiphany means? He said, no, but it sounds so impressive. I got to use it in my essay. So I said, well, figure out what it means, use it in a few sentences and we'll talk, but you never want to use a word that you don't know. Sometimes in a college interview later on, someone might reference an essay and you really don't want to go there. The second line, don't let your parent write your essay, please, or even heavily influence it. That is glaringly obvious to any reader. So you definitely don't want to do it. I like to start my brainstorming process with parents in the room because I think the parents can really add a lot of value from a brainstorming perspective. But when it comes to writing, it's really important that the student is doing the writing. And in a teenage voice, of course. The next tip, don't raise red flags. So the idea here is it's fine to show grit and resilience, but not hopelessness. You're selling your ability to thrive on a college campus in an independent living scenario. So you definitely don't want to raise red flags in your college application. The next thing is don't make it difficult to digest for your reader. Remember earlier, I said that the average read time is about 10 minutes. So you want to make sure that when someone's looking at your application, they can quickly get through it. The writing sequence as well, it flows well. And that takes a little bit of time and polish. The next thing, don't resume repeat. I've referenced that earlier as well. The idea here is a lot of students get worried that their activity list won't do its job, that the colleges won't know how hard they worked in a certain activity. Again, trust that the activity list is going to be amazing because you're going to put a lot of time, effort, and energy into using that tight space in a smart way, but then use the essay to tell the bigger story of you. So that doesn't mean that you can't reference any activities, but in the main essay, you want to do it in more of like an anecdotal story, aha moment kind of way versus I did this, I did that. Okay. The next thing, don't underestimate simplicity. Some of the simplest college essays are the best. I had an admissions officer once tell me that his favorite essay of all time was the student who wrote about the difference between waffles and pancakes. Totally simple, but they felt like they really got to know the student really well. Again, you'll have about 650 words to write your main essay. And, the idea doesn't matter as much as how you cover it. I did a tour at the University of Pennsylvania a few weeks ago, and the admissions director in the info session said, I guarantee you there's not a topic on the planet I haven't seen, but I haven't seen how you cover it. And she said she loved the essay about the student who wrote about the Walmart around the corner from his house and what it meant to him and in the community and his experiences at the Walmart. I mean, totally simple, right? But he obviously dug deep and made some reflection statements and really made that a special story. The next, and then we're on the bottom row here in the middle, don't repeat the school website verbatim. This gets into the supplemental, the extra essays that you may be asked to write for your colleges. So when you do your research, try to really find unique facts. If you're just regurgitating what they say on the website, it's what I call a brochure drop, and it's not worth anything. They know what they have to offer. What they don't know is what do they have to offer to you. And then the last thing, don't repeat. So we all have writing tics, myself included. And you don't want to, in your essay, repeat words, phrases, thoughts. You want to kind of start writing and move forward with every word, every thought. Okay. So here is what you do want to do in your college essay. The first thing is you want to start early. And the good news is you're at the early stage. You're in great shape now, okay? So I do a survey at the end of every admissions cycle with my students, and I ask them tips to share with future students like yourself. And I noticed in the first few years of doing this survey that every student was saying the same thing, and that's the tip. They all said start early. I wish I had put time on my side. Okay, the next one, middle of the top row, know your audience. You may or may not be able to figure out who is reading your application at the different colleges. Some of the schools make it very obvious on the website, others make it very mysterious. But in general, you're writing for a human being. And someone from Hopkins was giving an info session once for counselors, and they said something that I love to share. They said, make sure that you tell your students there is a human being on the other side of the computer. Okay, we are everyday humans just like them. We have good days, bad days, opinions, etc. So try to have a feeling of who you're writing for. The next thing, make an action plan. This is critical. So you want to put together a roadmap to get to the finish line because there are a lot of moving parts. Now, anyone who signs up for my follow-up materials, you will get my free essay planner. It's also on my website. You're welcome to get it there. But I put together a free essay planner that sort of talks students through how do you put a roadmap together. I think this is really important because I think that it's easy to have things fall through the cracks. And if you have a plan, it just makes the whole thing a lot more successful and less stressful. Second row, answer the prompt. So it's not the main essay that I'll show you in a few minutes is not as much like English class where you have to have this rubric and do this, don't do that. But for the supplemental essays, they will be asking very specific prompts. And I like to sort of color code those and say, what are they really asking you for? What are they looking for here? It's fine to go a little bit off-road in your answer, but don't go so far off-road that we're not sure what road you're on. Make sure that you're answering what they're asking of you because you're typically given very little space to do so, and you want to use the space in a smart way. The next one, why essays, connect the dots. So basically the number one most popular supplemental question that you will encounter from colleges is why do you want to attend my college? So you want to connect the dots between you and the college, again, in a meaningful way. The next thing, be authentic. So if I had 100 college admissions officers in this room right now, they would pretty much say the same thing to you. It seems to be the number one tip that I hear from them. They're looking for a unique, authentic teenage voice. They're trained to read for it, and it's what they want from you. The next thing is give a window to who you are. It does not have to be fancy. I've seen great essays on trying to gain weight, trying to lose weight, a unique cultural element in someone's life that really contributed to who they are, a road trip that led to a series of learning that then sort of went throughout life. Anything it is that you can share that really helps them get to know you beyond the rest of your application. That's what you want to do. Okay, the last row here, proofread. Now, I'm a professional editor by trade, so I am obviously partial to proofreading. However, you definitely need an additional set of eyes on your application. Whether it's a parent, a best friend, a coach, someone at school, whoever it is, try to get someone to take a look at it to give you a little bit of advice. Even when I do writing, by the way, for professional gigs, I always have editors looking at my stuff because you see, other people see things in our writing that we wouldn't see ourselves. A little warning, though, comes with this. If you show 4 people your essay, you're going to get 5 opinions. And when I see my students starting to share it with many people, it leads to what I call analysis paralysis, which is when they kind of just get stuck and they aren't quite sure what to do. So students, you are the architect of your story. You're the boss, you're the manager, you're the one in charge. But try to come up with some kind of a support team around you so that it will help you get to the finish line. There's an anecdote, again, I like to share there. I heard from College of Charleston. They said one time, several years back, 5 years maybe, a student uploaded breakup texts from her boyfriend instead of the main essay. So don't let that happen to you. If you're proofreading your application, you won't fall into that kind of a, problem. The next tip, show, don't tell. So anyone can make declarative statements. I'm hardworking, I'm athletic, I like this, I like that. But only you can show with your unique life experiences why you are that way. So that's a really, really good writing tip for you. Details and examples instead of declarative statements. The last tip, write it, file it, revisit it, and read it out loud. So I like to say, do one piece of writing, move it aside, move to the next piece, move to the next piece, and then go back to the beginning with fresh eyes. That's when you see things that you just wouldn't see once you're kind of so deep in it that it's getting hard to really be critical. So for the current juniors, the rising seniors, these are the Common App prompts for your application cycle. So for the students who will be applying starting this August 1st, basically class of 2026, these are the Common App prompts. You have up to 650 words to write this essay. I recommend you use somewhere between 500 and 650. I don't think you should be too low. You also don't have to go right up to the 650 mark. Use enough words to tell your story well. Now, don't stress. You don't have to write an answer to every single one of these prompts. These are prompts. They are just things to sort of gather a great idea from you. There is a free choice question at the end. So in theory, you could write about anything under the sun, anything at all. Okay. But I don't love the free choice. I've never seen an essay in all my years of doing this where I, couldn't somehow help a student fit it into one of these prompts. So a background, identity, interest, or talent so meaningful. I've highlighted in yellow kind of the key part. The lessons we take from obstacles, a time you questioned or challenged a belief or idea, an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth. The second one here I love, a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that you lose all track of time. The next one, happy or thankful in a surprising way. That's a new one as of, I think, 4 years ago. And then again, the free choice, which I don't love. I think there's definitely a way to answer, with the other ones. But again, see if one of these speaks to you, and that may be a great way to come up with an essay topic. But let's say you look at these questions and you think, there's nothing here that really speaks to me. These are boring. I'm not sure. Here's the Amy's essay prompt. It's basically, tell me a story about you. What makes you unique? What makes you tick? Help me get to know you beyond what I've already read. Okay. So again, don't tell them what you think they want to hear. Tell them what really resonates with you. And I guarantee you that is your success formula. So let's talk about supplements. So these are subject to change for the class of 2026. These are the supplements from last year. I picked two schools, however, that tend to do the same thing over and over year after year. So I'm pretty sure they'll stay the same, but I'm not 100% sure yet. And also this is a range. So the supplements are those additional questions that the colleges may or may not ask you. So at the low end, we have schools like, let's say, that ask 0 supplements. Like, okay, schools where once you get your Common App and your activity list done, you can apply. You do not have to worry about writing additional essays. Schools like the University of Pittsburgh don't ask additional questions. I think Michigan State, Ohio State didn't ask additional questions. I think Williams just asks for a graded paper, if I'm remembering correctly. So some schools have 0 supplements, which is great. They want to look at the main essay, the activities, and other things that you present. And then this is sort of the low to medium range, let's say, of supplements. So UMD has done this complete the sentence every year, and they give you 650 characters, not words, to answer. And the things in red are the things that have changed. So my favorite thing about last Friday, they typically change the day of the week each year, but does it really matter? Doesn't really matter. But whether it's Wednesday or Thursday, they're kind of just saying, give me something from a day in the life of you. The other one in red, how have you grown or learned from diversity? When the Supreme Court said that the colleges cannot use race in college admissions to determine college admissions, many colleges said, no, that does not resonate well with us. We want diversity on campus, and we're going to start asking for it. So a lot of the colleges added diversity questions, which I think is wonderful. And diversity means a lot of things. It can mean race, culture, opinion, perspective. I heard that actually from a UMD admissions rep at a college tour once. They said, it's anything that is diversity in your life. We'd love to hear about it. And then something you might not know about me is, so I started answering this so you could get to know me a little bit better. And this is a true story. So I wrote an article in high school about offbeat tactics students use to catch the eye of admissions. Amazed, I researched this creativity effect for years, updating my article for a wider audience. That project was my lucky charm, and years later, I'm helping students get creative and stand out. So I used less than half of the characters allowed, but you see how much I was able to tell with just even a little bit of space. So you want to cram your information, really use the space well. University of Michigan. This is what I would call like a mid-range supplement ask. They ask 2 questions and they've done the same year after year for many, many years. I can't remember this being different. The first question is communities. I'm about to sneeze, sorry. Maybe not. Okay. Everyone belongs to different communities or groups. Okay. So again, think about this in many, many different ways. I've seen students answer this in all kinds of creative ways and really have a lot of fun with it and just talk about what community it is that they're in. The second one, why Michigan? Remember earlier I said the #1 most popular supplemental question is why, and Michigan is a great example of that. Now, if you apply to the University of Michigan and you're applying to the Ross School of Business, there will be extra questions for that. So in general, extra programs or honors or scholars sometimes requires extra writing, sometimes doesn't. Now, these are just some examples, again, subject to change, but this gives you an idea of the kinds of supplemental questions you may encounter. So what is it? This is the big, the $1 million question. Everybody wants to know, what do admissions officers want to see? So again, I've highlighted some of what I've heard over the years. Sarah Lawrence in New York, why it's important to you and how you can showcase who you are. Again, that is show, don't tell, authenticity. That's what that says to me. UMD told me it's the dessert of the entire meal. This admissions officer said, I like to read the entire application first, and then I read the writing, and it's like the dessert. It's a sweet treat for me at the end where I really get to know the student. University of Georgia, another popular school around here. The essay does not have to be about some incredible hardship or obstacle. We are more interested in how creative your topic is and how descriptive you can make your writing. So this all really syncs up with what I've been telling you, that it's all about authenticity. It's all about showing a window to you. So a lot of times people say, no, but really, what do they want to see? What do the admissions want? So this is sort of, if I had to distill it down to 3 things that I wanted you to take away from tonight, we do hear the word character a lot. A lot of colleges say, we're really looking for character. Now, when I started sharing that tip, a lot of students said, they were wanting to really be very direct, like I've got great character and here's why. And I said, no, that's not it. They want you to show through example that you have strong character, right? That you're helpful, caring, loving, resilient, like that is character right there. The other tip I like to share, one of the Ivies a couple years ago on a tour said, we are basically looking for good roommates. And I thought that was such a wonderful line because they are putting people together 2 by 2 in these rooms, right? And they want to make sure that people are going to go who can get along with other students. One of the Ivies, actually, I think it's Stanford, if I'm remembering correctly, has an essay prompt that says, write a letter to your future roommate. So kind of that sort of speaks to that a little. And then finally, the story only you can tell. That is the key to what you want. Okay. So what can you do right now? So juniors, you can start creating this timeline that I referenced. I'm more than happy to help you with that. Again, I'll give you a free report, but I do recommend that you make a list of all the things you need to do so that you can sort of start plowing through the steps and get to the finish line that way. It's a great time also to research your college list now, because I find that the students who wait until late in the summer to research the college list all of a sudden are being hit with a lot of supplements. So I think it's good to get, it's almost like playing whack-a-mole at the beach, that game where the minute something pops up, you kind of hit it down. These are the things we know you can do, right? You can also draft your activity list now. That's a great way to see if there are any details missing that you may need to track down at school through a teacher sponsor, et cetera. And then you can also brainstorm and start drafting your main essay. I just showed you the prompts. So I'm not saying you have to write it tomorrow, but knowing what the prompts are and some of my tips, you can start making some notes and thinking about what a great theme might be for you. So if there are any 9th or 10th graders in the room, focus on academics and activities. Those are the most important things for you. You do not need to be doing the things you see above, okay? The prompts may change next year. The colleges may ask for different things. We don't know. But for 9th and 10th graders, the most important thing, again, is really those activities will really matter on your college application. And now's a great time to just dig in, continue digging in. And then I recommend you take notes, especially of those wow factors, because I do find that when I meet students junior, senior year, they tend to sometimes have forgotten some of the details. So make notes as you go along, and that may help you when you get to the application process. Are there any questions so far before I go on? Any questions at all? Anybody? No? Okay, all right, we'll keep going. We'll have Q&A at the end as well, so keep track. Okay, so this is a picture. There's a number at the bottom, and think about, what do you think that might be? I mentioned earlier that I want you to think about your application process like it's a marathon, not a sprint. So here are some marathoners. 73 is the number of days between today and August 1st. That's the day that the Common App launches for the class of 2026. So 73 days before you can start applying to college. The other thing that happens on August 1st when that Common App launches is all of these supplements will be finalized. Now, many schools will announce supplements earlier than August 1st. I am actively trying to track those down for my students, and we are able to get a hold of some, but not all supplements before August 1st. That's why I recommend that you do the things you know you need to do so that when those supplements start trickling out, you're ready to shift gears and do that. So I also recommend that you print out a calendar of the year. And, oh, I'm so sorry. There was a different image I meant to insert here. I apologize. We're obviously at the end of May. Okay. So pretend like March and April are crossed out. Sorry about that. On the right, though, I've got a countdown for you to the key dates. So again, 73 dates until August 1st. And then October 15th is the first early action deadline we tend to run into. November 1st is a huge college deadline. That's also typically the early decision deadline if you're doing that. December 1st, there's another deadline. And then May 1st, 2026, about a year from now, you'll be wearing a college sweatshirt. It happens so fast. That is college decision day. So trust me, I know it seems daunting, but it will fly. It will fly. So I'm going to read some of what I call rock star essays. So these are, I mentioned earlier when I said that, I asked for students tips from prior students for future students. So on that same survey, I always ask my students, would you like to share your writing to inspire other students in their writing? So anytime I share examples, two pieces of information I like to mention. One is these are approved to share by the students themselves. The other thing is I'm not going to read the entire essay. One time I had a parent say, like, I didn't get the full context. So my goal here is not to give you the full context, but rather to kind of drop some creativity seeds so you can see how other students handled the main essay, and maybe that will help you inspire your best idea. So here's one. If I were a fruit, I'd be a dragon fruit. The first time I saw dragon fruit, I was 12 years old, passing through the fruit aisle in the grocery store. A sparse selection of pink prickly melons caught my eye, standing out amongst the shiny red apples and yellow-green bananas. My first actual taste was in a Starbucks drink loaded with chunks of the white, fleshy, seed-speckled fruit. I expected a crazy exotic flavor, but the drink was subtly sweet. In every way, dragon fruit was not what I expected. For exactly this reason, I'm a lot like a dragon fruit. So then this student kind of goes through like I'm more than what meets the eye, full of surprises. I'm a first degree black belt in karate, but whenever I mention this, people are shocked. I'm not naturally aggressive, except in karate when I need to be. In my dojo, I was one of the only female and Black students. I guess I'm not who people picture when they think black belt. It certainly doesn't help that I'm very short and somewhat of a girly girl, but I've shown them that things are not always as they seem. And then she goes on, and whether it's because of my personality, appearance, or blended heritage, I'm not what people expect. So more to that story, but I thought that was a beautiful story. Here's another one. Remember my point that you could write literally about anything. I am an undefeated Qubits champion. Qubits is a visualization game I love. A race to recreate a pattern of using a set of 16 blocks. Some patterns are simple, others are complex. I've realized that beyond the game, my own life has a pattern too. Regardless of initial hesitancy, I've continually learned how great things can turn around if I give it time. At 10 years old, I moved. from one state to another. After my first day of school, I wrote a birth certificate and handed it to my parents, declaring that I'm not allowed to live in this new state. But within 72 hours, I had a whole new set of friends, was absolutely in love with this new place I began to call home. So she goes through different ways that she sort of found patterns in her life, good or bad. And I thought, again, beautiful, beautiful essay. Here's another one. Trudging up and down a steep hill, bushwhacking through knee-high dead leaves gets a little exhausting when you do it every day. That's what I did with my best friend before we set out 2 years ago to carve a path through the wilderness to our summer hideaway. Our trail would be just for us, a shortcut to the slice of forested paradise behind my house. The truth is, our woods, while dense, aren't all that remote. If you squint just past the canopy of 200-foot trees, can you just see it, by the way? This is such show language. I love it. You can spot the houses on the other side. But this small valley had been beyond reach to most casual walkers. Even my mom never got to see the wildflowers growing along the snaking creek. However, to us, it was the source of endless adventures. We spent our days swimming, building shelters out of fallen logs, fishing to little avail, and watching the sun go down. So this student and his friends basically sort of created a trail in the neighborhood so that, other people could experience this really cool, adventurous place. Okay, one more and then I'm going to move on here. So I am wired to be a caregiver. I always have been, I always will be. This student sort of backs, I'm not going to give all the personal details because I'm trying to keep these somewhat anonymous, even though they've been approved to share. So the student talks about getting a ton of migraines, and a hospital neurosurgeon showed me MRI scans of my brain and my spine. No, this is not a sob story. This is how I got my spark. Seeing inside my own body and understanding how to target my specific health problem made me fall in love with medicine. So the student talks about becoming an EMT and what he learned from the experience. But I love this part toward the end. My family likes to call me flawlessly clueless. At 18, I still forget to close doors, brush my retainer, and clean the mountains of laundry on my floor. Becoming an adult includes lots of responsibilities, and my parents fear if I can't remember to close doors after being reminded for 18 years, I can't make it in the adult world. However, put me in front of a full-on medical emergency, and I am calm and ready to diffuse the situation. So anyway, and then at the end, he said something that kind of looped back to that. He said, maybe I'm not closing doors because I believe the door is always open. There's always a solution, and I can't wait to learn more ways to make a real difference for other people. Okay, so those are just some examples that show you that you really can write about anything and everything. So let's go ahead and break and take questions. There's a quote here at the bottom that says, reading great writing inspires great writing. And I love to share that. I know that you have to read a lot in school and it's exhausting, but I do feel like that's another one of my fun tips is that before you sit down to write your main essay, if you read something creative, it does get your wheels kind of turning in a creative way. So on the intake, there was an intake form for tonight that, again, I've put in the chat, and I'll put in again in case you haven't seen it. Some of you asked some questions for tonight that I do want to share the answers to. And then we'll move on to, I hope some of you will have questions in the group here as well. So the first one is, do colleges read the essay? At a Penn State information session, the presenter said they don't read the main essay at all. So this is a question that comes up every year about Penn State. And I actually just emailed admissions again yesterday to clarify, but I had an email from them from last year here. I had sort of shared with some of my students. Basically, what they said was they don't always read the main essay at Penn State. And the reason is there's a Penn State supplemental question that basically says, tell us how you would thrive at Penn State. So I typically tell my students, usually, 90% of the time, you could take the main essay, shorten it, and add sort of a why Penn State at the end. And to me, that answers their prompt beautifully. It depends. Obviously, your main essay may not be able to do that, but I think what they're saying is because their essay prompt is so close to the Common App, they read theirs instead of the main essay. So again, on the Common App, you will be able to see some colleges who do and don't review the main essay, but most of them will be reviewing the main essay. That's why they're asking for it. Great question, though. The second one, when should you start working on your essay? I say when you're in the headspace to really do a great job and start getting creative, go for it. Again, having a plan really helps. So starting with college research, the activity list, the main essay puts you in a great position to then move to supplements over the summer. The last question you asked, is it better to use a topic irrelevant to the major in the college essay? That totally depends. So some schools, many schools will say, why do you want to study the major you want to study? So obviously you don't want to answer that in the supplement and in the main essay. I sometimes, but not always, have students talking about what they want to study in the main essay. It just depends. Again, you're looking for your number one headline, the number one story that you want to share with colleges, and that may or may not be what you're looking to study in college. It really depends. So I like to do what I call a 360 review, which means I like to look at the whole student, the whole package. What are you presenting? And make sure that everything we're presenting in the writing department is really moving forward in the application. Okay, so let me stop sharing for a second. Again, I put in the chat my form, but ask me questions. This is your time. We have another 15 minutes, and I would love to answer any questions that you have. If you can unmute, show your beautiful faces, we can. Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Uh, Great stuff. I know every child is different. What if you have a child motivated to get started and going on something for August 1st? The whole, oh, this is something I've got to do, and there's all this for help parents guide students to be a bit more focused on it.
Okay, you broke up a little in the beginning, but I think the essence was, how can, as parents, we
Oh,
support
sorry.
students? Is that what you meant? Was that the question? How can parents support?
Yes.
Okay.
Support them, encourage them, coerce them. Yeah. Yeah.
Great verbs, great verbs. Okay, that's a great question. And it's tough. This is a stressful time between parents and teenagers. I remember years ago, I was driving back from something and one of my students called me in tears. And I actually drove right to her house because it was kind of not far from where I was. And I went in, I sat at the dining room table and we talked. And I'll never forget, the mom came over and gave me a big
Mm.
hug. She said, this is the first day in months we haven't been fighting. So I said, it's okay. It's okay. So there's a lot on the line, but look, as stressful as it is for the parents, it's even more so for the students. So I'll tell you what we did in my home. Like I said, we have 3 boys. We have a screened in porch that we loved. It's like our good Zen space outside. So before each of my sons applied to college, my husband and I went out on the porch with each one of them, and we basically sat down and we said, college can cost $250,000. It's a huge expense depending on where you decide to go. We are making a huge investment in you and your future. Okay. So we're willing to give you as much support and scaffolding around the process. But you're about to be an adult here, and we also really need you to dig in. So in our family, what we found was and this is when I was very first starting my business.
Mm.
I'm really into spreadsheets. So I said, here's a great spreadsheet. Why don't we sit down every 2 weeks and you brief us? You're the manager, you're the boss. So if you could just every 2 weeks tell us where you're at with this, we're going to relax and feel comfortable. Okay.
Great idea.
And that way they've got ownership, right? They're involved, but you still kind of want to know. With my private coaching students, I give them a really robust multi-tabbed planner that walks them through the whole process. And I say at the first meeting, I'm going to copy your parents on this because I want them to know the plan. I want them to know what we're doing and how we're proceeding. But you're really in charge of the deadlines here, right? Like no one's going to do this if you don't. So, and I'll say like my third son wasn't that interested in getting started. And, this was pre-COVID when I was like, everybody was coming in out of my home office. And I kept saying like, do you want a meeting? And he's like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. And like literally in August, he comes down in his pajamas and he's like, I'm ready for a meeting. I'm like, what meeting? Like I'd forgotten it had been. So I feel like every student comes to the process in their own way. And I asked to share this example with you. I worked with twins last year and I said to the mom at the end of the process, each of your daughters did so amazingly well, but like each in her own right, like each one had such a unique path. So she said to me, Amy, even though they're twins and they share DNA, I feel like each one of them is like a snowflake. They each have their own unique path. So I said, please, can I share that? And that's how I view students. And that's how you should view your student, is just each one of them is going to go at it in their own way. And I do think we should encourage them in a loving way to get as much done over the summer as possible, because senior year is really fun, right? And if they're going to spend senior fall stressed out about this, it detracts a little bit from this amazing once in a lifetime experience, which is senior year. So I hope that helps. It's
Super helpful.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
Yeah, appreciate it.
encouraging. It's what we call, I used to be on the board of the parent encouragement program. So it's what we call 1 foot in, 1 foot out parenting. Acknowledge the stress, but let them take the lead because each one of them can really shine like a star. So what other questions do you have? Any other? Okay. All right. Well, we're kind of wrapping early. I think we got through a lot of good information. Oh, the one thing I didn't share that from my notes that I will share with you. Sometimes people ask me, are there any subjects I should not write about in the main essay? I do want to share this with you because this is important. So in the industry, we hear people say, well, don't write about the 3 Ds. And then we started hearing, don't write about the S and the C, and now it's 2 Cs. So what do all these letters mean? The 3 Ds are death, depression, and divorce. The S is sports, and the Cs now are camp and COVID. So why do people say, don't write about these subjects? So they say it because any of these subjects could be very prevalent in the teenage population in terms of teenagers, having been exposed to these experiences, topics, etc. However, I don't believe that, and sports, by the way, let me address that quickly. 8 million high school athletes in the USA alone. So a lot of high school athletes. So if your college essay is, Friday Night Lights, I love football. I'm on the, I'm on the field and we're hype sending the ball down the field, right? Like that's like boring football. Anybody can say that. I had a football player once. His essay was called 68 and Breezy. And again, he said, go for it, share it. 68 and breezy was the perfect cool internal temperature that he developed being a football player. And in the beginning of the essay, we're on the football field and he's talking about how 68 and breezy helps him chill out, helps him, help others around him relax. But then he brings 68 and breezy beyond the football field to other experiences in life. So that was a beautiful sports essay. It wasn't boring, straightforward. It really was unique. So again, my philosophy is there is no topic under the sun that is off limits for you. But regardless of the topic you choose, even if it's one of the ones I just mentioned, make sure your approach is unique. That's the most important thing to keep in mind. So anyway, that's my last tip. So I'm going to close with the same promise I started with, which was students, you can shine like the brightest star. I promise you. And I'm going to hang on the phone, the line here until the last person hangs up because that's all the material. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer it. And would love to hear from anyone who's interested in, private coaching. I do this, I work with students one-on-one and happy to talk to you about that if you'd like. But that's the presentation. And thank you for your time tonight as well. Brian, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. We can stop the recording if you want, and then we'll wrap, it looks like in a minute.